Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I know when you are in shul and the rabbi delivers a sermon, you don't have a choice. You can't escape, and you have to listen or pretend to listen. So I appreciate you taking the time to hear my Torah insight for this week. So tomorrow's portion is a double portion, a very long reading, and it's Parshiyot Tzria-Metzora that talks about a Metzora. This is a person who was inflicted with Tzarat. And when you read it first, it doesn't seem to be very relevant to our life today. Tzarat is a skin condition of the time that we don't have today, and the Torah goes into details about what condition is considered a tzarat and what not. And when you read it, you think, how is it relevant for my life today? From the other hand, when you look at other aspects of the parsha, it seems to be as relevant and timely as ever. And this is when the Torah talks about the concept of quarantined, a person who needs to be quarantined when he has a suspicious tzarat, and also the concept of badad yeshev, the concept of self-isolation that a Metzora needs to go through in his process of purification and healing. So these concepts of quarantined and self-isolation that the entire world, everyone who walks on this planet is thinking about, is actually in this week's portion for the first time. And until today in Israel, they use the same terminology that is used in this week's parsha, esger, seger, which we're talking about being quarantined, and the concept of badad yeshev or bidud, which is the idea of self-isolation. So what is this story with the Metzora? So a Metzora is a person who is inflicted with a skin disease, and instead of going to a doctor or a physician to find healing for it, he has to go to a kohen. He has to go to a priest. Why does he have to go to a priest? Because the healing from it is not a physical healing, but a spiritual healing. The reason why the person was inflicted with tzarat is not because of a physical condition, because of a spiritual condition. And therefore what happens is, a Metzora goes to the Kohen examines the condition that he has, and sees if those symptoms are actually a sign of the illness of tzarat. And if it is, then the person has a process of purification and spiritual healing from this disease. What is the spiritual illness? What is the spiritual illness and disease? What is causing a person to get tzarat? So the Torah doesn't tell us in this week's parsha what the person did to deserve that. But if we look in the Torah, we find two places where people were inflicted with tzarat. And we look on it closely, then we figure out what is the reason that a person would get this skin condition. Who are the two people? None other than Moses, and his sister Miriam. Moshe was inflicted with tzarat when Hashem was telling him that he's going to lead the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim and redeem them. Moshe Rabbeinu said, "Ve'em lo yishmeu bekoli," but they are not going to listen to me. He's saying the Jewish people will not listen if I tell them now is the time to go out of Egypt. God has sent me to redeem you from slavery. They will not listen to me. Immediately afterwards, he was inflicted with tzarat. Why was he inflicted with tzarat? Because he was engaged in a negative talk, in Lashon Hara. He was talking negatively about the Jews. He said, they will not listen to me. Now, if you look further in the Torah, you find that they actually didn't listen to Moshe. V'lo shamu el Moshe mikotzer ruach u'ma'avoda kasha, and they did not listen to Moshe because of the state of mind being enslaved. However, because Moshe Rabbeinu was engaged in negative talk, in talking about the Jews as the one who would not listen, he was inflicted with tzarat. The other occasion that a person was inflicted with tzarat was the sister of Moshe, Miriam. When she's sharing negative thoughts that she had on Moshe about his relationship with his wife, she's sharing it with her brother Aaron. She's immediately inflicted with tzarat. As you may know, this was already years later when the Jews were in the desert, and they were instructed to not journey until she was healed from her tzarat. So the Torah is not telling us directly why a person gets this disease, but from those two examples we can see what caused it. In both examples, the people were actually telling what they knew as the truth about another. But being that this was negative talk, a person who is talking negatively about another is considered Lashon Hara, is considered a gossip which is prohibited by the Torah. And when a person does it, they are inflicted with tzarat, and this is in order for them to know that they have to heal, not only from this physical condition, but most importantly, to heal from their wrongdoing. Now, why is the Torah not telling us in this week's parsha, when the Torah goes into the fine details about what kind of skin condition is considered a tzarat, with the colors of it and the hair growing on it and so on and so forth? Why is the Torah not telling us what is the reason why the person was inflicted with tzarat, and it just has to be hinted from other places in the Torah? Perhaps the Torah is teaching us here the most important lesson, or the first important lesson about Lashon Hara. And this is, when you see a person who is suffering as a result of their mistake they did, when you see a person who was engaged in things they shouldn't be, your only thought should be in mind, how can I help this person? How can I heal this person? Instead of thinking what is the cause that happened, focus about the negativity, think about not about the illness, but about the healing. And this is why the Torah does not spend any time to think what is this person exactly did to deserve it, but what the person need to do now in order to recover from it, in order to purify himself or herself from it, in order to elevate themselves from the situation. So, what is the process of purification for someone who is engaged in Lashon Hara, in negative talk about another? Now, it's important to note that if a person speaks about another, even as a negative, in order to save their fellow from being hurt by that person, obviously not only that this is not considered Lashon Hara, this is an obligation the person has to warn people from being hurt, and to tell them enough information so they can be saved. However, anything beyond that, and especially when a person is sharing negative information just as his gossip, that is considered in the Torah Lashon Hara, and this is when a person will be a Metzora, he will be inflicted with tzarat. So what is the purification of a Metzora? So there is a process that he has to go through of self-isolation, and so on. And at the end of it, every Metzora needs to bring an offering to the temple. Here's an interesting law about it. while each Metzora has an obligation to bring a specific offering at the end of the process of purification, one person can give the offering, the sacrifices, on behalf of someone else. So if another person was inflicted with tzaraat, I can go and give the offering and they will be atoned for the wrongdoing. And this raises a very simple question. If the idea is that a person should atone from their sin, how can I do it? Just like you cannot put on tefillin for me, and one cannot light Shabbat candles for another, how can someone gives an offering to a temple to atone for someone else? But here comes even a more surprising law. In the offerings of Metzora, like in many of the offerings that were brought in the temple, there was a multi-tier system, few options of offerings that one can bring. A standard offering requires a few significant contributions to the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, or in the desert, the tabernacle. But the Torah says, Ve'im dalhu, if a person is poor, Ve'en yado maseget, and they cannot afford that standard contribution, the Torah gives them a less expensive contribution, less expensive offering that they can bring to the temple, and they will be atoned just like the person who is giving the standard offering. And it's interesting to note that this is about every offering in the Torah, even a volunteer offering. The Torah is giving an option for a person who can afford less to give an offering that will be valued just as much. And the same is with tzaraat. A person who's inflicted with tzaraat, with this skin disease, they have an offering that they could bring, but if they cannot afford it, they were given a second option. Now, what happens if I see a person who is poor and he has tzaraat, and I decide, being that one can give the offering for another, I will bring the offering on their behalf. I'm not poor, but I want to give, I want to pay for them. So the law is, and Maimonides writes in the laws of tzaraat, that actually the contribution that I need to bring is not what he would bring as a poor person, but I need to give according to my abilities. And if I can afford the standard offering, then I must give that, and I cannot give the poor person offering. And the question over here is obvious. I am here volunteering to pay for the atonement of a poor person. Why shouldn't I pay what they are obligated to pay? Why do I need to pay according to my means? I'm just volunteering for someone else. Why is the Torah putting on me the obligation according to my means instead of according to the means of the person whom I am atoning for, who I'm paying for? The Lubavitcher Rebbe answered this question in a way that teaches us all a tremendous lesson. The Rebbe says, why is it that one person could give an offering to the temple on behalf of another? If this is your obligation, how can another fulfill your obligation? Says the Rebbe, when one person is inflicted with tzaraat, you are also inflicted with tzaraat. The entire Jewish nation is one people, is one body. So when one other person is suffering because you are inflicted with tzaraat, you are also inflicted with tzaraat. And therefore, When you are giving the offering to the temple, you are not giving it for them, you are giving it for yourself. It's as if you got the tzarat yourself. And being that this is the reason why you can give an offering for another person. Just because it's considered that you are atoning for yourself. When another person is inflicted, I am inflicted too. And therefore I can give the offering in their behalf. And because of that, if I'm not poor, I should be paying according to my abilities. Because I'm not giving it for him or for her. I'm giving it for myself. And if I give it for myself, I should give it according to my means. And therefore, a person who can afford a standard offering will give that, even if he's atoning for a poor person, who their obligation will be to give only the poor person the less expensive offering. The Rebbe teaches us it's not only that we have a responsibility to help another, but really it's not helping another. Their pain is our pain. Their suffering is their suffering. Their wrongdoing is also we are responsible for it. And therefore when we are helping them, we are really helping ourselves. Because we are all one entity. And it's so appropriate that the Torah teaches us this concept in regards to a Metzora. Because the reason why a person is inflicted with tzarat is because they were engaged in evil talk. Evil talk, it means that you don't feel the pain of another. Instead of you see someone is failing, someone wrongdoing, you should feel the pain for them. Instead of that a person is going and spreading that negativity, obviously they do not feel the pain. Says the Torah, in the Korban of Metzora, I will teach you the lesson. When someone else is suffering, you are suffering. When someone else is going through a hard time, it's you. Even when someone else is having a mistake, feel like it's you. Feel their pain. I'd like to conclude with a story, with a life story. 12 years ago, a rabbi in Arnof in Yerushalayim, Rabbi Yeshayahu Haber, got very ill. Unfortunately, very quickly, his kidneys stopped operating and he was connected to dialysis. He was only 43 years old, with young children at home. And thank God, miraculously, a donation of a kidney became available, and he recovered from his illness. When he left the hospital, after seeing so many people suffering, going through dialysis, he made a commitment. I will dedicate my life that there will be no Jews, no Israelis left in dialysis. I will try every effort to find a living donor, to donate a kidney to save the lives of people who are on dialysis. 2 years after he left the hospital, he established the organization Matnat Chaim, Gift of Life. An organization that found strange donors to just donate a kidney to an anonymous person so they can save lives. Since then, in the last decade, 800 kidney transplants were done through this organization. 800 lives were saved by people who donated kidneys to people they didn't know before. Just volunteered to save someone else's life. Just a couple of months ago, a member of the Knesset took a few weeks off work. in order to donate the kidney through this organization. And there's hundreds of people who are willing to donate, and they are just in the process of finding a match for a donor. Rabbi Haber was asked once, did he ever hear regrets from the donors? That they feel bad, that they risked their lives, that they took time off work. And Rabbi Haber said, the only regret I heard from donors was that I don't have another kidney to donate. A couple of years ago, in a wedding of his child, Rabbi Haber turned to a guest and said, in this wedding there's 200 people who are operating only with one kidney. The donors and the receivers that he knew as the guest in his wedding. That their life was connected through this amazing charitable act of saving a life. Unfortunately, last week, Rabbi Haber was inflicted with the coronavirus. And he was fighting for his life in the hospital. Thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of Israelis were praying for the rabbi who saved so many people's life. But last night, his soul was returned to his Creator. The leaders of Israel, the Prime Minister, the President, and also ordinary people were mourning, and men who, because of their illness, dedicated their life to save other people's life and managed to save 800 souls. Rabbi Haber was asked once, when he came up with this plan, that he will find a donor for every person who needs a kidney. He was asked, why would a stranger donate a kidney to someone they don't know? And without thinking, Rabbi Haber responded, this is not a stranger. All the Jewish people are one people. We are one nation. We are not strangers to one another. And therefore, when you give a donation to someone else, you're not giving it really to someone else. You are giving it to yourself. This same lesson that we learned from Parashat Metzora, about how it's not about helping another, it's about realizing that another is part of us. It's about the responsibility that we have one for another. This lesson of Parashat Metzora is the legacy of Rabbi Yeshayahu Haber, who dedicated his life to show that we are not strangers to one another. So friends, today is the first day of Iyar. It's Rosh Chodesh Iyar. It's a new month. Not only any new month, but the month of Iyar. The Hebrew word of Iyar, Aleph Yud Resh, stands for the words Ani Hashem Rofecha. I am Hashem, you healer. On this day of the first of the month of Iyar, I wish you all, whoever needs healing, they should be healed. And we should all stay healthy. And the entire world who needs healing should be healed. And we all should be able to share only good and healthy news. Shabbat Shalom and Chodesh Tov.